Welcome to Scorched Earth and the general reading for the sign of Aquarius, Sun, Moon or Ascendant for the month of July 2023. I hope you are well. I'm using the Tarot of the Abyss for you today. Just before we get started, if the reading resonates with you and you'd like to go a little bit deeper, there will be an extended that you can access at the end. That's the first link in the description box. The second link in the description box is to my private community, the Order of the Phoenix, over on Circle. It's chock full of some really truly astounding people, and you can get access to all of the extended content for no extra cost. So if that is something that sounds of interest to you, you know what to do with those links. Now, Aquarius, let's have a look and see what's going on with you. 3 cards for Aquarius, please. Well, there's the first, and it's the Six of Swords in reverse, which is interesting. Let's flip this around so you can see what I'm looking at. Tell me about current energy, please, for Aquarius. There it is. We have the Sun, beautiful. And what's going towards Aquarius, please? The Two of Cups. So definitely a deepening of bonds and relationships this month. I mean, don't think for a second that this is just restricted to those intimate sexual relationships. I mean, this seems like a coming together of two people, and it can be in an intimate sexual way, but it can also talk about business partners, it can talk about friendships, it can talk about work colleagues if you're sufficiently close. But it also talks about intimacy, and I think ultimately that's the deepest meaning of the Two of Cups, and everything that flows from that. So let's just pin that there for a second. We do have the Five of Pentacles at the bottom of the deck, which is a card that talks about not meeting your own basic needs. So here we have a card that talks about intimacy, and then the underlying theme being that there's something that's been missing. Yeah, 3 of Swords underneath that, and 7 of Wands. I mean, this certainly speaks to a personality that perhaps might have been keeping people at arm's length. But there seems to be some sort of light bulb moment that's going on here, Aquarius, and I like that very much. Let's get some clarifiers. Up the filter paper at the same time. Let's have a look. Tell me about the Six of Swords in reverse, please. Thank you. Ooh, we have the Death card. And the Five of Swords. Tell me about the Sun. We have the Two of Pentacles. And the Ten of Cups. Yeah, man. Okay, tell me about the 10 of Cups, and then tell me about the 2 of Cups, please. We have the 3 of Swords, and whatever what was it just fell down there. We've got 2 cards, and it is the Devil and the 10 of Pentacles. So, well, there's some challenging cards in there, but actually I do feel like these are all pushing together towards something much more positive than you possibly have experienced hitherto. So let's just put all of these where you can kind of see them. I mean, given up trying to keep these things straight. I mean, between the camera and my just general lack of an ability to straight line anything there. Right, I'm going to sit back here a little bit. So we start with the 6 of Swords, and interestingly this is in the reverse. Now this is interesting because in its upright it talks about movement away from something. For me often that is well, it can talk about geographical movement, but it can also talk about mentally moving away from something. When it shows up in the reverse, what we have is a return to something, and likely it's returning in the mind rather than physically returning to a thing. And when we've got the Death card and the 5 of Swords showing up underneath here, I mean, literally as you're walking backwards, the 6 of Swords is going back to the 5 of Swords. We've got your mind coming back to an ending, right? Something that has ended in the past that you are returning to. And in the best tradition of these kind of exercises, I do feel like it's looking for what you got wrong at the time. Now, you know, when things break down, and I think it's probably fair to say that there's a... Go away. Sorry, there's a fly flying around. That we're talking about relationships of a sort, but they could be old work relationships, they could be old business partnerships, they could be family situations, friendship situations, right? in the best tradition of kind of revisiting those in our heads and looking for what is wrong, what we're actually trying to do is extricate the wisdom from that situation, right? Sometimes we go back over things and we flip-flop all over the place, and it ends up being an exercise in finding another reason to feel sorry for ourselves, right? Sort of victim mode engaged. But I don't feel like that's it here for you. I feel like there's a genuine desire for clarity on something that has ended in the past, that you seem to innately know that you have a capacity to understand to a greater degree than you did at the time that it was being experienced, right? And it's interesting that we've got this 5 of Pentacles and 8 of Pentacles sitting here together, because the 8 of Pentacles is a desire for mastery, as well as the achievement of mastery itself, actually. It is putting in the work into something so that we become an expert in it. The 5 of Pentacles is addressing where it is that something is lacking, right? Where there is a poverty in existence somewhere in our lives, which then makes perfect sense that you would have revisited to see what it is that you got wrong. Now, the 5 of Swords, just like the 5 of Pentacles, there's an instability there with whichever suit it represents. In the 5 of Pentacles, it's an instability of resources. In the 5 of Swords, it's an instability in thought. And that can be thought patterns, thought processes. It can be, an underlying desire to self-sabotage that none of us in our conscious mind would agree was a useful thing. And yet, so many of us engage in it. But it also can, the 5 of Swords also can talk about verbal conflict. It can talk about verbal sparring, saying whatever needs to be said to be the winner in any given situation. And I think that we all know people like that who, say whatever they need to say in the moment to feel like they can walk away from a situation having won. And I think we've all been in positions where we have been the people who've done that. Now, whether you're looking for your own self-sabotage, whether you're looking for your own kind of Pyrrhic victories of the past, or whether you are considering somebody else's, it seems to be personally very relevant to you at this point in time. Like I said, because the desire is to understand. The desire is to have something to work on. Now, this might be a loose approximation of shadow work, but it feels kind of, I don't know, it feels more analytical than that, and it feels like it's the situation that you're wanting to pull apart and your responses to it, so that you can understand more readily what has happened in the interim. Now, we have the 4 of Wands there, which is my card of home. And by home, I don't just mean your 4 walls and your roof and all that kind of thing. I mean the feeling of home to you, the stability, security, joy, happiness that is felt in amongst a group of people. That sort of energy. I often say, if you were coming up with a way of trying to define the 4 of Wands, aside from its more obvious points of indicating marriage and stuff like that, it would be, who are the 3 or 4 people that you would call if something really, really amazing happened to you? You had news to share. Who would those people be? Those people are home. Whatever situation that is home. But also, if you had something really, really terrible happen to you, who would be the people that you would go to for relief, support, succour? Those are your home situation too. Now, if you've listened to both of those and said, well, I wouldn't fucking share it with anyone, then something of the idea of home has been compromised for you. And perhaps that's what it is that you're going back to look at this point. Yeah, that's 5 of Swords. 10 of Pentacles. And the 3 of Swords at the bottom of the deck. So, there could be something altogether more abstract going on here, Aquarius, because the 10 of Pentacles, as well as indicating, your home, your family, your business, security and stability, as I've already mentioned, it's also my card of generational karma, and it could be for some of you that actually there is some work that is going on here with past life shit that you're bringing forward, or generational shit that you have inherited from your family that you are looking to work through. When we are born as part of the civilizing process. You know, we are taught that certain things are good and certain things are bad, and so in order to be accepted by the crowd, we have to emulate as far as humanly possible, in our little childish ways, what is good. But sometimes the things that are presented to us as having value turn out to be quite the reverse. So if you were brought up in an environment where stoicism was valued and any kind of emotional feeling at all was not, then you would learn very, very quickly that having big emotional outbursts or having very, very strong feelings about something such that you would have an emotional reaction to it would isolate you from the family group. It would make you stand out. It would make you not be part of something. And bit by bit, you know, that would become entrenched in you. And as you go out into the world, you're like, right, this is the way that reality works. These are the things that are valued by people. And these are the attributes that I shall demonstrate. But then there may come a point where you realise that actually what you've done is repressed your emotions so fucking hard that you can't access them anymore. So what felt like it was a victory in the moment, which was assimilating yourself into the family line and what was expected of you, then becomes a thing that ostracizes you and isolates you later on in life, right? This is just an example. I'm not saying that this is true for all of you, but it's the theme that we're looking at, right? Where there was something that felt like it was the right thing to do, and over the course of time, we're kind of coming back to this idea that maybe actually what I was told was valuable, or you were told was valuable, was just a result of the projection and the emotional trauma that had been suffered by people before us. Now, I don't feel like you're throwing yourself headfirst into some sort of pit of despondency. I don't see a well of trauma and pain opening up for you, but there is an acknowledgement of some pain that has been experienced, and perhaps correspondingly the coping mechanisms that you employed to avoid that moving forwards. And it's interesting to become aware of just quite how many of our decisions are made from a place of trying to avoid a pain that we have already experienced before in our lives. The fact that you are casting your mind backwards. You seem to be in a state of reflection. And I wonder if this has got something to do with Pluto shunting around as it is at the moment, right? We've had a taste of Pluto in Aquarius, but Pluto's now retrograded back into Capricorn. I think, it sat for a few weeks in the early degree of Pluto, and now of Aquarius, and now it's going back into Capricorn. And there's a sense of us kind of looking back at the systems that we have used. Because Capricorn, represents rules and structures. And even if you are a rebellious Aquarius who goes, well, like, fuck what society wants, fuck this, fuck that, fuck the other, we're all working to our own personal rule set. There's always something that is providing the structure for us. And that isn't always correct. And I wonder if there's a kind of going back to the drawing board, or going back to roots, going back perhaps even to family of origin, and looking at things and going like, I don't want to be the latest manifestation of this particular kind of generational trauma. I just don't want it for myself. So re-examining core values, re-examining the structures that you work to, and certainly the ones that define the edges of your reality and whatnot, and going, well, actually there's something missing here. And you've got an opportunity here that really does start here and carries on for the next 6 months or something like that. I think it's January before Pluto returns to Aquarius, and it will bob back out again before landing permanently in November 2024 in Aquarius. There's an opportunity to go over all of these old values, old systems, old rules, old structures, and start breaking down what actually holds true value to you and what does not. Now, when we move into your current energy, we have the Sun, and that's just the most beautiful card. It's the card of Leo, or one of the cards of Leo in the major arcana. And ostensibly, essentially, its meaning is joy and positivity and happiness and vulnerability and all of those kind of things. You know, I think the Sun card is literally a representation of the feeling of the first warmth of the sun on your skin after the darkness of winter. You know, day where it gets warm enough that you can actually take your coat off or your jumper off or something like that, and you feel the sun directly on your skin, and you're like, that feels nice. That feels really, really warming. But it has lots of other meanings too, and one of them is very specifically consciousness. The moon card represents for me the subconscious. It is those things that we don't really see clearly. It's the things that are obfuscated because it's the workings of our subconscious mind. It's not something that is designed to be, seen readily. And it sits as a counterpoint to the moon, but it's kind of like an expression of your soul too. And I feel like your conscious mind is very focused on your happiness at the moment. Now, the other thing that the sun represents is the inner child. And a lot of the problems that we have as adults is that our inner child, whether we like it or not, is actually the one that's usually doing all of the heavy lifting when it comes to our adult life, our interactions, our decision-making processes, all of these, right? And it's the trauma that kind of stops us from developing, right? Trauma, loss, poverty, all these kind of things from a spiritual perspective and an emotional perspective kind of have our inner child topping out at a certain age. And when we're in a very reactionary frame of mind, it's usually the inner child that's panicking, going, holy shit, I need to make a decision about this now. This feels very much like something I experienced before, whether it's rejection or whatever. And it goes, fuck, I need to avoid this. I need to run away from this. And that's what it does. And, it's a coping mechanism. And these coping mechanisms do work for a time. But I think on the whole, they create more problems than they solve. And certainly as we begin to get older. So with all of this in mind, it's quite clear that you are attempting, and I would say actually succeeding, for better or worse, succeeding at being very conscious, being very present about what's going on with you in the here and now. Like, I wonder if there's something over the last few months that's acted as a bit of a catalyst for you to look at your life in its entirety, right? Start trying to dig for the originating points of a particular way of doing things. The fact that we've got this card here that is talking about intimacy, and then we have correspondingly a card that is talking about lack, right? It feels to me like it's the emotional attachment, which has been something that you have identified as missing and yet desirable in your life. So going back is looking at where did it fuck off to? What was the point where you decided that had no value to you? It could have been the breakdown of a relationship that you had, perhaps with a parent, perhaps with a family member, friends, all that sort of stuff. Or it could have been witnessing the breakdown of such between your parents or between people that you cared about. And you're like, hang on, these people were supposed to be the centre of my world and they fucking hate each other. Like, in order for me to survive this, I need to throw up a few walls because I'm being pulled in all sorts of different directions here. And I had to kind of maintain that detachment. But the thought processes seem to be going very much back to the idea of the collective. More than just you. We've got that 10 of Cups there. Now for me, the 9s talk about how you personally manage whatever suit it is that is being represented at the time. So the 9 of Cups would be how you manage your emotional landscape. The 9 of Pentacles would be how you manage your energetic resources, right? Once we get to the 10, particularly with the 10 of Cups and the 10 of Pentacles, it becomes a state of how can I bring together people in a state of union and harmony, right? And be an active participant in that. Because I think everybody has to show up in the Ten of Cups, holding their own 9 cups strongly, before the Ten of Cups is truly possible. And this Two of Pentacles is kind of like, how the fuck does this work? Right? It's just kind of juggling. Sometimes I say it's the juggling between, duty and responsibility, and the things that actually all of us would rather be doing than having duties and responsibilities to take care of. It's sometimes it's the feeling that there is a decision that needs to be made, but not quite knowing what that is. Sometimes it's just a question of resources altogether. But it seems to me like you've got some input here, and you're kind of like, how the fuck does this all work? Like it's this state of trying to break things down so that they can be understood. Like I said, with that main card being the Sun, it's the desire to shine a spotlight onto almost the mechanics of how this stuff works. And what it is that you are missing that is enabling you to be in that space. Now we have the Devil here and we have the Five of Wands here, and that's really, really interesting. I think the Five of Wands come out for just about everyone. That might be a lie. It's certainly come up for another 2 signs that I've read for so far. But the interesting thing about the Five of Wands, which is Saturn in Leo and represents struggle, conflict, the things being more challenging than, frankly, we are comfortable with. I've had a real trouble separating that from the Six of Wands. These 2 cards are beginning to not exactly fuse together, but almost be like a yin-yang kind of situation, right? One is almost dependent on the other. Without the promise of the Six of Wands, the Five of Wands becomes struggle for struggle's sake. It becomes the survival instinct. Bouncing from one situation to another, just hoping that at the end of it that you're still in one piece. Whereas the Six of Wands would be not only having persevered and triumphed against the struggle, but also understanding the purpose of the struggle in the first place. Like I said, this can sometimes talk about competition. And the Six of Wands would be the coming first. Well, not necessarily even coming first. It would be succeeding, triumphing over difficulty. So we have this card here, and we have the implication of the Six of Wands, even though it's not showing its face. And then we have the Devil. Now the Devil, as well as having dominion over the material realm, covers a lot of things that are very uncomfortable for people. So we're talking about toxicity of any sort, codependency, being stuck, being afraid. That's huge, because I do think actually the whole shtick of the Devil is actually the things that we feed by way of being afraid of them. Substance abuse, drug abuse, any kind of anything that is done to an extreme as an escapist tendency. Those things that we come to rely on because they help us get through the day. It covers a whole world of shit, frankly. But like I said, what's running along underneath that is a fear. A fear of not being good enough, a fear of not being X, Y, Z, a fear of being too close to people possibly, and because of all of the shit that brings with it, a fear of being too far away from people. The fear is endless, it's non-stop. And this constant state of conflict that you're in about things. Now it seems to me that your conscious mind wants the security, the comfort, the love that we see in the Ten of Pentacles and the Ten of Cups. But there's something here that's rattling around in the darkness that's saying, but that's a threat. You know, it's like saying you can't be hurt by anyone if you don't let anybody in, right? If you don't fall in love with someone, then you can't get dumped, and it won't, even if you did, it wouldn't fucking matter, you know? But when you wall yourself up against the possibility of any experience, and everything works on polarities, so you can have the good and the bad all contained within, you know, the potential of one situation. You keep yourself very restricted. Without the possibility of the bad, there is no access to the good. Without the struggle, there is no succeeding. Think about it like depression, right? A lot of people suffer with depression. When you're in the midst of a really, really dark depression, everything feels like it's too much effort. Nothing feels like it's worth it. There's no point in getting dressed because you're just going to have to get undressed again at some point in the day, right? So you just leave your pyjamas on. There's no point in brushing your teeth because you're going to maybe eat some food and then your teeth will just get fucking dirty again, yeah? But maybe there's no fucking point in eating because it's too hard. It's too much work to go and stand up there and make something, do something, right? In those situations, if you get to yourself to a point where you get up and you go, I'm going to brush my teeth and I'm going to do it, that is an achievement. It might be a small achievement, but it's a reflection of something that has changed, right? It's a willingness to put yourself into a state of discomfort for the benefit that you know will come. And certainly the avoidance of any kind of cost to you, you know? And then bit by bit, maybe you can take yourself out for a walk, and that feels like a massive achievement, even though some people take that for granted. You know? Some people get up, they brush their teeth, they do 50 fucking press-ups, they do all of these things before they've even had breakfast, and they're just like on all day. And you're like, shit, I can't even make my bed. Like, I just can't do it. In those situations, brushing your teeth is an achievement. The step on from that is getting yourself out for a walk half an hour a day. Allowing the sun to be on your skin and allowing yourself to feel okay with that. When we look back, often it's difficult to process how we could have been in a situation where we had no energy. And sometimes we wonder how we functioned at all. Well, it's just a mystery to us. Right? I'm going to look back and we're like, how did I get into that state? The truth of the matter is, in those situations, what we're doing is handing over everything that we have to the devil. And often that's because we've thought about something so fucking hard that we've trapped ourselves. And then futility seems to reign, you know? Now, I'm kind of, I'm right at the extreme end of the examples here, but there seems to be a gap between you and the Ten of Cups and everything that the Ten of Cups represents. I mean, maybe it's having a family, something like that, right? But certainly this feeling of belonging to something, being a part of something. Or maybe it's part of your Aquarian demeanour. It's just like, well, I don't want to be doing what everybody else is doing. I want to be doing my own thing. I feel like if you're just rebelling against something for the sake of rebelling against it, then that isn't a true rebellion. That becomes just self-sabotage. Being able to pick and choose with discernment, and we do have the Queen of Swords at the bottom of the deck here, what is right for you and what isn't, in the present moment as it's happening, is far more valuable to you than just kicking it back against it for the sake of it. So these two cards down here, that represent perhaps the conflict and the fear that you have of being a part of something that you have rejected for so long, can be given a different kind of hue if we consider, oh look at that, we've even got the Fool sitting behind the Queen of Swords. If we start consciously applying our mind to it and looking back to see where this came into being, the Devil and the Five of Wands there. Because what's coming towards you in July, I feel, is not necessarily a relationship. It's not like Mr. Right, Mrs. Right, whatever. But more it's a shift in your thinking. It is an acceptance of the fact that actually intimacy is something that you want to experience. Because there's a benefit in it that maybe you can't even quite articulate here at the moment, but it seems to be a drive that's coming from somewhere deep within you. And you might say, well, look at the state of the world. Right? We all need each other. Far more so than we ever have done before, and that would be absolutely true. But it feels like this isn't a question of personal survival or anything like that. It's a question of soul growth. It's a question of removing the detachment. Because the detachment never really was authentically you. It was a coping mechanism. And where the coping mechanisms exist, and like I said, there's always an expiration date on coping mechanisms, there comes a point where they hold you back rather than protect you. And I think that you've sailed right up to that point now. Because there's a desire to put in the work here. There's a desire to give yourself what you have not received up until this point, right? Somewhere there has been poverty, there has been lack, whether that was financial poverty, emotional poverty, spiritual poverty, whatever, right? Maybe your parents just weren't particularly tactile and weren't particularly impressed with emotion. And so that's what you took from the situation. Emotion equals bad. Closeness equals bad. We don't like that. We're going to go do something else. It feels to me like you're hitting an absolute revelation that isn't you. Like I said, it's not an authentic part of who you were when you arrived on this planet. It's something that has been learned. And this Three of Swords and the Devil showing up here, the Devil come out twice now, is an understanding that you have kept yourself almost in a place of perpetual discomfort around the idea of emotions and intimacy and all that kind of thing, as a way of protecting yourself from the possibility of its loss. Although I do think that there are certain traits that are pre-programmed into souls when they choose to arrive under a particular, set of astrological blueprints. But I also think that we line ourselves up to have experiences by way of our, early caregivers that accentuate those particular aspects of us. So, for example, like Scorpio, I have not yet met a Scorpio who was not in some way traumatized by their childhood. And it's a grand sweeping, generalization. And I haven't met every Scorpio on the planet, but every Scorpio that I've had anything to do with whatsoever has come from a truly difficult background, right? And for them, this energy of being very, very guarded about everything to do with them, not showing emotion, not allowing people into their sacred inner space where the softness and the sensitivities lie, is as a direct result of being open with those sensitivities and whatnot in the past and suffering as a result of it because it was rejected or it was mocked or something. And I feel like Aquarius, there's a similar sort of vibe going on here for you. A recognition that the rebellion that you have engaged in, if I put it in rebellion, that's kind of, this sense that whatever everybody else does, doesn't matter how cool it is or how not cool it is, or it actually with no value judgment at all. If everybody else is doing it, you don't want to do it. Like, this is permanently striking out on your own. Has almost been like a way of keeping yourself on the periphery of everything. You can poke your head over every now and again and see what other people are up to, but your automatic response would be to reject it. Like, nah, that's not for me. I don't want to do that. And similarly too with intimacy and closeness between people. It's like, if you allow people in, then you're giving them the potential to do this to you, to hurt you, to trap you, to do anything else. I mean, maybe the situation is simply that you want to be free. But in being free, shit, did we not talk about this last month, Aquarius? Like, to what extent were you actually exercising your own free will? I feel like we were. And like, quite strongly. Because if you were refusing to allow intimacy to occur between you and anyone else, on whatever level that this applies, obviously it's going to be graded depending on the kind of relationship that we're talking about, simply because you are afraid that it will lead to pain, then it's actually the fear that's making the decision. It is not your free will. It is not your free choice. It may feel like it. And the devil's very good at dressing up in different clothes and parading around and pretending that it is your free will that is being exercised. But actually it's anything but. It simply comes down to this place of fear. I think you're starting to get a handle on this, and I think you're starting to understand it. Because it seems to me that your goals are beginning to change. You know, you've been sat in a Five of Pentacles kind of state for far too long, and now the desire to begin working towards, once you've worked out what the fucking mechanics of it are, to a different set of goals is really, really strong. You know, we've got this Queen of Swords and we've even got the Lovers cards sitting underneath there too. So we've got conscious co-creation and, more importantly, free will. We've got the Fool, the beginning of a new chapter, but also, extremely significantly, we have issues of faith and trust being brought to the fore with the Fool. But we have this discernment of the Queen of Swords, who's actually looking at all of the information and being like, well, shit. Like, to some degree, I have not exercised my free will. To some degree, I have kept myself smaller out of a state of fear. And this can't help, I think, but have you kind of vacillating between what it is that you have been taught, what it is, in fact, if you will, that you've inherited from your parents by way of generational karma, or certainly an understanding of the way that the world works, the responses that you developed as a result, and what this new paradigm is going to look like for you. Like, what are the core values that you are working to? What do you want to achieve in your life? What do you want to feel? Because the Ten of Cups and the Ten of Pentacles are here very strongly, and there's a collective element to that. I think that you are done being out in the cold, Aquarius, but I don't think that you quite know how to come in. And the whole of July is, I think, about recognizing the extent of the influence of the devil over your existence, and bit by bit flipping this around, right? Really employing that Lover's card there and saying, well, I don't choose that, but I do choose this. I don't understand the value of that yet, but it seems to be an essential part of what is needed for this, so I'm gonna sit with it for a while. You know, like I said, this kind of going back over old systems, old rule sets, and deciding whether these are applicable to you anymore, whether you want to be an entirely different kind of Aquarius to the one that you have been. Because there's something that feels like it's been missing inside for a long time, and you do feel incredibly motivated to go after what that is. This is big stuff, Aquarius. This is huge. So I'm going to leave it here and I'll go over to Vimeo. We're going to look at July specifically, because I think you would want to know if there are any particular pitfalls in what you're looking at here. But honestly, I feel like you're a little, maybe as you have been in the past at least, a little too focused on the pitfalls. Now it seems to be about the conscious exploration of the benefits of embracing that which you have rejected your entire life, and I would really like to get into that. So if you if this has resonated with you and you want to come and join me to dig a little bit deeper, like I said, Vimeo or Circle, either of those will get you what you need. But if not, no shade at all. I've got this funny feeling that sits somewhere between, and it's vacillating actually, vacillating between slightly stricken and incredibly curious. Like you want to know what's on the other side of this, and yet the terror is there. It's kind of like, oh God, And it sounds like a funny thing to say, but I would try and find a way of enjoying that feeling, Aquarius. Oh, this just sounds completely batshit, but it's getting your adrenaline moving. Whenever adrenaline hits, there's always that, well, at least I'm alert. I know I'm alive, you know, sort of feeling. Well, I feel bit by bit, what has been stricken by you is being replaced with this curiosity. And so I would find a way to lean into it if you possibly can. Ah, okay. I'm going to leave it there. Come and join me if you fancy for the extended. If not, if you do, if you do not, whatever, it's fine. But know that I love you all very, very much. And I'll see you soon.